In today's video, you are going to learn what CSS is, how it works, and then I'm going to show you some real world examples to kind of bring it all together here. So first off, CSS, it stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And what it is it's a programming language that is going to allow you to style your web pages. All right, it's a language that web developers and web designers will use to add styles to a web page. For example, it might be changing color, it might be changing the sizing of different elements, the font size. It could be laying out different elements on your page, so having rows of elements or rows of text and different things like that. It could be adding different types of spacing, even different animations. CSS is a pretty powerful language that can kind of handle a lot of animations in which you could potentially use CSS instead of JavaScript or something like that, at least for the animations here. So more specifically, you can use CSS to select different HTML elements that exist on your web page, and then you can apply styles to those elements or to a group of elements that you select. And CSS, it is a rule-based language. You define the rules using groups of styles that will be applied to your selected elements on your web page. So let me show you some examples of this. Let me first show you my web page here. So I just have this kind of blank web page here to where I have this header, and then I have a description, and then I just have some list items right here. And as you can see, it is not particularly beautifully styled. But if I go back to my CSS right here, and let me go over to my HTML file so you can see the HTML. So as you can see here, within an overall main tag, this is my H1 tag. This is where you can see Code Ryan. And then I have a P tag with my description and then my list items here. That is my HTML that is kind of describing to the web browser, hey, this is what I want to show on my web page. And now I can use CSS to give this some more style. So I'm definitely not going to give this beautiful styles here, but just to kind of give you an overview of how CSS works. So if I go back over to my styles.css file, and one thing to note real quick, within my HTML file here, I can link to my CSS file using a link tag here with a rel attribute set to style sheet, and then an href attribute set to styles.css. This is the path to my CSS file that I want to apply to this page. All right, so this is just telling this HTML file that I want to link to this CSS page and apply those CSS styles to this HTML. All right, so let me comment out this H1 selector here, and real quick, comments in CSS, you create them just like what I do here. So you use a / and then a star, and then a star and a /. So anything between that syntax, it's going to be commented out and it's not going to be applied. Those styles won't be applied. But then if I uncomment this out, you see that now when I remove those comments, you see the color highlighting now works, and this is now being applied to my web page. So the way that this works is that first you use some selector, and right now all I'm doing is selecting an H1 element. So this would be a selector for an H1 element. And then after your selector, you open up a pair of curly braces, and then you add some properties and values to say these are the styles I want to add to this selected element. And I'll get into selectors in more depth in future. This is just kind of an overview of the syntax of how CSS works. So this is saying get all of the H1 elements within my HTML here. So grab this H1 element here, and then I can add properties and values here to style my H1 elements. So here I'm adding a color of red and then a font size of 30 pixels. And pixels is just a way to size some fonts and different things like that, but I'll cover this in future CSS tutorials. So now if I come back to my web page here, you can see that my H1 tag of Code Ryan is now red, and it also has a little bit different sizing to it. Now I can do a very similar thing here to where if I want to change the layout of my web page, well, I can grab my main tag here, and if I go to my HTML, I'm grabbing this overall main tag here. So this is like a container to the rest of my HTML. And then I am setting it as display grid. I'm placing all of my items in the center, and then I'm giving it a height of 40 viewport units. And if none of this makes sense right now, that is okay. I will have future videos covering this just to give you an idea of how this works. So now you can see that all of my elements here are kind of displayed in the center of my page. And you can do that using CSS to kind of lay things out in the page. Now, CSS also has various different selectors to where you don't need to just select an element like this. You can get more specific with it to where here I'm saying, all right, give me an LI that is the first child and set the color to blue and the font size to 20. So if I go back to my web page here, you see that my first list item, or the list item that is a first child, is going to be the color of blue, and it's a little bit larger because I changed the font size. So you can use more specific selectors in CSS. And then also you can use different like sibling and child selectors. So this selector here, it's saying, all right, within my main tag, give me a P tag that is the immediate child of my main tag. And then if I go back to my HTML here, you can see that it made my paragraph here a lot larger because this is a paragraph that is an immediate child of my main tag within my HTML. All right. So you can select different elements and you can select multiple elements and group those together. And then you can give them some different styling rules to lay out and style your web page. All right. So hopefully that gives you a good idea on how CSS works, what it is, and what it's used for in web development. I have future tutorials coming on how CSS works, so make sure you're subscribed for that, and I will see you in that next one.